That's a Kentucky area code, but I'm actually calling from Nashville, Tennessee.
Wait, didn't we have like 3 callers from Nashville yesterday?
It's a Tennessee week.
One of them was not me.
What is going on? All right. What's your name from Nashville?
My name is Sam.
Sam from Nashville.
I'm calling so I've sorry, I'm like really nervous. I'm calling because I've seen like a lot of really crazy mudslinging towards one of my favorite content creators, whom I know you have a good relationship as well with, Hassan Piker. And I'm not sure if you have been keeping up with it, because it's sort of like this intersectionality between like political commentators and like random crappy YouTube drama. But and I know that you also have a relationship or have been on the HD podcast. So anyway, just to give like the spiel really quickly, if you haven't heard of it, Ethan Klein sort of has this like crazy campaign against Hassan lately, insinuating that his fan base is anti-Semitic and that he's allowing this sort of area of his community to exist, and just going above and beyond to make the most bad faith arguments in order to like perpetuate this narrative. And it's really like been personally upsetting to me, specifically because here's this guy who, I'm sorry, I'm like really fucking
yeah, no, good.
really
You're
nervous.
doing good.
Here's this guy who's like defended the Palestinian people for so long, way before like this year, like for years and years and years. I myself, I'm a Jewish person. I went on Birthright when I was 19, and I was radicalized by Birthright Unplugged. So I was able to see what was going on in the occupied West Bank at the time, and it was particularly upsetting to me. So, yeah, no, I guess the reason I'm calling is because I'm just curious if you are aware of what's going on. Because for me, it's just so personally upsetting to see this happen to someone that I feel like has been so staunchly in the right place with this issue, being brutally attacked by people whom I viewed as being like figureheads of like a progressive movement, people like Ethan Klein, other YouTubers as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have not followed this closely. I've seen like, you know, and I'm on Twitter less and less these days, but I've definitely seen touches of it on Twitter. And I don't know if it was like last week or when Hassan, you know, had texted me that he found this whole thing upsetting. You know, all I can tell you is right now, it seems like we have entered a stage where strong supporters of Israel, ones who I would say have been, you know, really intensely in denial as to what Israel is doing and what it's become. I'm put aside, you know, the question of like, for the moment, for the sake of this argument or this situation, the founding of Israel as being highly problematic. Just take this past year in isolation. If there had been no history whatsoever, if this was completely outside of a context, there's just simply no way. And I think the context actually does not make it any more favorable for Israel. I think quite the opposite. But let's just assume for a moment that this only happened on October 7th. That Hamas came over, they broke through, they killed somewhere between 600 and 800 civilians, and then anywhere between 300 or 400 military personnel, which is the case. The idea that this is a proportionate response, the killing of, at a minimum, I mean, I don't think there's any sort of reasonable individual that thinks it's less than 40,000 plus people, and that we know that almost 2/3 of this is women and children. We know that there have been thousands of kids underneath the age of like 2 who have been killed. I don't think there's anybody. Even without the context, this just looks like war crime after war crime.
May I ask a question, Sam?
Yeah.
So getting to that point, like, I think what's particularly upsetting about this, like, obviously the entire situation is incredibly upsetting, and it's one of the most horrendous things that I hope I'll ever have to witness in my life. But I think what's particularly upsetting, like I mentioned before, is seeing people whom I previously thought were fairly progressive become like radicalized against this issue, and
listen,
up people that are so much worse with their bad faith arguments, and I wonder if you think it's more about that just hits home for them in a weird way where they're able to suspend their disbelief.
That was the point that I was trying to make. It's like, I feel like we have hit a stage of this now where it is so horrific. It is so obvious that even without
you can't even acknowledge it.
Even without context, that to remain in denial, you need to go further. Right? Like, you can't hunker down. You need to go on the offense. I will tell you this. I had a guy, family friend of my father's age, who called him this week and asked if I was an anti-Semite.
Jesus Christ.
And it's like, wait a second. First off, I'm not saying anything now that I haven't been saying for a year. And I've been critical increasingly over the years, to be fair. But starting in 2004, when we did this show on AM Talk Radio, we had the Israeli embassy contact our show, after our first segment about Israel, which was in, second month of doing the show, because they wanted to refute our points. I mean, we were critical of Israel. I think I've become more critical as I've learned more about, over the years, more critical of just sort of like of Zionism per se. But the point is, I think we're at a point where it is so horrific that to maintain the denial, one needs to sort of like shift the entire conversation. I do not believe that Hassan is anti-Semitic. That has never come up.
Thing too.
Where does this?
I watch a lot of his streams, and if you're making those types of arguments, it has to be in bad faith, or you're at least clip chimping, as he would say.
I don't know
I just never have witnessed anything even remotely like that.
I haven't followed this close enough, but I don't know if it's in bad faith as much as it is, at least in the instance of Ethan, that it is very, very difficult for some people who are attached to an idea or certain realities or have family there or whatnot to reconcile what they're seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who literally don't believe that anybody has died in Gaza. They think it's all fake. I mean, the amount of denial, we're in that era, that phase of the epoch where it is so hard to deny, even if you can justify the context. It is so hard to deny when you see the images of how flattened Gaza is. When you see the images, when you see a video of a child in the middle of the street, cut down and then shot, and then as soon as people come to help, they blow up with a bomb. I mean, how do you process that? And I'm not being an apologist for this perspective. I'm just simply explaining. I think we are at that point where the knuckles get whiter as they try.
Do you think there's any form of recourse then? Because I'm not in a position to sway the opinion of like someone like, Ethan Klein, because I don't know him and he doesn't know me and I'm a nobody. But like within, like, would you say, I know it's like just a stupid thing, like, what's your advice for talking to people? But like for people that have been radicalized just by virtue of how horrific this is and them not being able to process it, like how do you even like try to explain to someone like that about what's going on and why it's so important to be like steadfast in support of Palestinian rights?
I honestly, I don't know how to communicate with such people. I can tell you, like, the idea of somebody, the idea of someone
already tried.
Listen, my father and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on this.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it. But the idea that like a friend of my father's would call and ask if I am anti-Semitic, hey, does your son have an irrational hatred of Jews? I don't think this guy was invited to my daughter's bat mitzvah. He certainly won't be invited to my son's bar mitzvah. But like, how twisted do you have to be to place that phone call? Like, what mental gymnastics do you have to do? Like, it is that is the response. I think that honestly, like, I'm not a psychiatrist, but if I were, I suspect I would have a field day with this. Like, if your response is not like, hey, wait a second, this guy who I've known for, his 57 years of his life, went to his bar mitzvah, went to his wedding officiated by a madracha, I wonder if he hates his children or his sisters or his parents because they're Jews. That's your response to my critique of Israel. Like, where is what's going on there? And so, that's, I think that's,
I mean, another guy in this field just said he's glad Michael passed away, so he didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I thought it was absolutely despicable.
I mean, that is
scraping the bottom.
That is a different beast altogether. That is just somebody who is haunted by embarrassment. I mean, the idea that I can tell you, and I appreciate the phone call. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, thank you.
That that dude, if he passed away, not only would Michael not be referencing that person 4 years later, I think it would take maybe 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, honestly, like that is. People are telling on themselves.
Yeah. Sometimes when you say things, you think you're commenting on the world and you're actually just telling on yourself.
Yeah, let's go. Now that we're talking about this, I mean, we are in this phase where those people who, could attempt to justify, again, like, lose all context. Lose the fact that these people living in Gaza have basically been in a Warsaw ghetto for 70 years. Lose the fact that so many people were depopulated. I mentioned this, yesterday, right? Did I talk about that Warsaw ghetto stuff yesterday?
Yep.
Lose all that context. And there was a period of time where you could you refute how many people have died, or you'd argue that Israel is the most moral army in the world, and then you see, oh wait, they're literally targeting children with sniper fire. It's a kid when you're shooting them. You have a scope. You line them up and you shoot them. And we've seen the pictures. And then you see full-on debates about whether it's justified to rape Palestinian prisoners. And then you see doctors come back, doctors who work in traumatic, war-torn nations and go, I've never seen anything like this. And then you have every aid organization in the world say they're using food as a weapon. I mean, we could go on and on. And so what do you do at that point? You no longer can justify it as like, you would defend themselves. You would defend yourself if Mexico came in here. Don't you think America would drop a nuke on Mexico? I mean, that's essentially what's happening. It's slow rolling, but that's essentially what's happening. And so when you can't reconcile that, you've got to go the opposite. You've got to go the opposite direction. You've got to get more bloodlusty. And here's Ben Shapiro to give us an example.
Thank you, Ben. I'm a Christian. I go to Biola University in La Mirada, California. I want to ask you, as an American Jew, how can you continue to condone the actions of the Israeli government, condoned by the U.S. government, in the Gaza Strip, where over 40,000 people have died, including Palestinians and Israelis, and large numbers of children and civilians? How can you continue to condone those actions?
Okay, hold on. I want to correct you. I don't just condone the actions of the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israeli government. I celebrate and laud them. I'm not morally apathetic about what's happening. On October 7th, Hamas launched the most deadly war on Jews since the Holocaust. They killed 1,200 innocent people. They took 250 hostages. 100 of them are still being held hostage.
All right, pause it for 1 second. Let me just go through some of this. I believe in Argentina, there were more Jews that were actually killed in one period. Maybe it wasn't in a day. In the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what innocent means. He doesn't say civilians, though, because we know that about a third of the Israelis killed on that day were military personnel. I only bring that up because people say, it's war. International law says that an occupied people can do anything, in terms of legal terms. I think morally, killing civilians is wrong. I don't write international law, but that's what international law is. And so he's got to go through this whole defense thing, which of course was the same exact answer that he would give. And again, minimum 45,000 people dead. Minimum 60, 70% of homes destroyed. This is all minimum. Infrastructure, power, universities, flattened. How many people are scarred emotionally? Kids. I mean, it's just, it's impossible to wrap your head around. He could have given the same answer 2 weeks after October 7th. So you have to keep giving the same answer, but he has to get more aggressive about it because there's less and less justification. I should say, even on his terms. Never mind, I'm not talking in a vacuum. I'm talking in his terms. Go ahead.
Pathetic about what's happening. On October 7th, Hamas launched the most deadly war on Jews since the Holocaust. They killed 1,200 innocent people. They took 250 hostages. 100 of them are still being held hostage. I know members of families of hostages who are still being held, American citizens. Hamas could end this war today by surrendering. They've chosen not to surrender. Instead, they spent billions of dollars building terror tunnels below civilian areas. It is not incumbent on the Israeli government to surrender just because terrorists are evil enough to hide behind civilians. The Israeli government has gone through such extraordinary efforts not to kill civilians that it has managed the best civilian to terrorist kill ratio in the history of urban warfare, and it is not close. I personally know soldiers who have gone door to door in the Gaza Strip who have risked their own lives to prevent civilian death. Israel has complete and utter air superiority over the Gaza Strip. Turns out that Hamas doesn't have an air force. They just had a series of tunnels where they hid all their leadership while their people suffered after their people voted for them, and then they effectively established a dictatorship over the course of the last 20 years. Israel, with their complete air superiority, certainly would have had the ability to commit full-scale human atrocities had they wanted to.
Pause it.
They have complete air superiority.
Pause it. The only thing that he's not bringing up here, and this is the excuse, if they wanted to fully genocide them, and they have a very vernacular definition of genocide. If they wanted to kill all the Palestinians, they could. We know Israel has a nuclear weapon. They could drop the nuclear weapon. The reason why they don't do that is because they're walking a tightrope. I think to a certain extent, Netanyahu's like, I can't believe Biden has allowed me to do this without cutting off weapons. I would contend that if Israel did what it wanted to do, and let's be clear, they have destroyed 65% of where people live. I think that's a minimum.
All the universities and hospitals.
There's a story in the Washington Post about how a guy, an Israeli driving a bulldozer, committed suicide because of PTSD from all the live and dead bodies he ran over. Now, of course, it was a sympathy piece for this guy who couldn't handle it,
Well, that piece
as opposed to the people who gave him the PTSD by dying so disgustingly and horribly. But my point being, this argument, if they wanted to, I mean, like, imagine a German officer on trial. You rounded up Jews. You put them in the Warsaw Ghetto. You kept them in there for months and then started taking 7,000 out a day, ostensibly to send them to a work camp, but it was the death camp. We charge you with genocide. Hey, nobody in the Warsaw Ghetto had an airplane. We could have just blown up the entire thing if we wanted. Imagine that would be the defense. Imagine that would be the defense. People would just say, are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind?
Well, that story you mentioned about the guy with PTSD, he said he got it from running over terrorists. But that calls into question how they're coding terrorists. Because how are you in a position where you can just run over a whole bunch of terrorists?
In a bulldozer.
Yeah, either you have, one way, if you have determined who is a terrorist and not, and put them in one area, or you're just calling any, say, male above a certain age.
Of course.
terrorist.
Well, we know that was the rules of engagement. Should we play any more of this? I don't think we need to. I was looking to have some fun in this one. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.